When I say the word fail, what comes to mind? Were the words or ideas that came to mind positive or negative? For most of my life, this word has always felt negative. I was an athlete throughout my childhood, and I tend to be pretty goal-driven. So yes, fail always felt negative. I didn't achieve a goal. I didn't do enough. Failure was the polar opposite for me to success. Pretty sure I'm not alone in the way of this thinking either. But as I've gotten older, I've changed my philosophy on failing and, more importantly, how I want my children to think of it. I want them to have full lives and experience everything they want without being limited by a fear of failure. Looking back, I can think of things I didn't do or try or experience because I was afraid to fail. My fear of failure was greater than experiencing the experience, and I probably missed out on some pretty awesome things. Now, don't get me wrong, failure is hard, and it can feel discouraging and disappointing and disheartening. It's a lot of D words right there. But the point is, no one wants to willingly experience those feelings. They don't feel good. But there's some opportunity that comes through failure. And this is the sweet spot. What if we're able to reframe failure and see it as an opportunity for growth, change, and development? Now that's starting to sound a little bit more positive, isn't it? It still isn't going to feel great to fail, but it's a whole lot less deflating and a whole lot more motivating if we can focus on the positive that comes from the experience. And if this is what we want for our kids, we have to be willing to experience it ourselves. We have to model this attitude and approach. As parents, sometimes I feel we put this pressure on ourselves to have all the answers and to always do things right. To always succeed. We think this is like our job as parents. But I think we should look at it differently. Instead of focusing on always succeeding as parents, we should focus on always trying our best. And when we fail, be willing to be vulnerable in front of our children with our failures. Work through the experience with them. What went wrong? What we learned from the experience? What we could do differently next time? What we gained, even though we failed? Not only does being vulnerable strengthen the bond with your child, because they start to see you as normal and not just this figure that does everything right and expect everything to be done right, but as someone that makes mistakes just like them. But it also opens the door and gives them the permission to fail themselves. It kind of like normalizes failure. It shows that failing is a normal part of life and can actually be a good thing. Faith and Jack tend to be perfectionists. And unfortunately, I think they get that from Dave and I equally. But it can be frustrating for them when they struggle with something or it doesn't come out perfect. But I always tell them, and it's so true, I have always learned the most from the things I've struggled the most with in life. For me, at least, when things come easy, they can kind of be taken for granted a little bit. When I have to work really hard for something, I appreciate it so much more. So the value becomes deeper and the understanding's deeper and the appreciation for it is deeper too, because you had to work for it. So while in the moment it can be a little frustrating, when you get through it, it is that much more powerful. And there are some pretty important victories that can come from failing. First of all, it takes courage to fail. It takes courage to try something really hard. So even if you fail and don't achieve what you hope to accomplish, you've still succeeded at demonstrating courage, which is a really important life skill. The more you use your courage muscle, the easier it becomes to challenge yourself to try harder things in the future. So the next time you fail to achieve your goal, focus less on the failure and more on the courage it took to just try it in the first place. And you can focus on that victory. Secondly, failure builds resiliency. When we fail, we have a choice. We either give up or we try again. Every time you choose to try again, you're building your resiliency muscle, which is one of the most important life skills you can have. The stronger your resiliency muscle is, the easier it becomes to deal with setbacks and the more willing you are to work through hard things. And failure builds humility. I could talk for hours how I believe humility is a totally undervalued trait in our society, but I believe wholeheartedly that it's super important quality that when you're able to develop it, leads to deeper appreciation for your achievements and more meaningful learning about yourself and stronger empathy for others who struggle. When something comes easy, it's easy to take it for granted like we talked about before and underappreciate it. You assume it'll always be that way. It's really hard for you to understand why it doesn't necessarily come easy for everyone. Failure destroys this mindset. When you fail, you realize things don't always come easy. You have to work for things. You have to put in effort. And then when you succeed, you appreciate it so much more because you know how hard you had to work for it. And it allows you to appreciate the effort others put in also. And even if you fail, you have still made progress and are better off than you are before you started it. It's the whole 2 steps forward, 1 steps backwards concept. You're still moving forward, and that is a victory. And finally, when you're not afraid to fail, your lives will be so much more full of experiences. Remember at the beginning when I mentioned I feel like I missed out on things when I was younger because I was afraid to fail? Well, when you aren't held back by the fear of failure, you can try and take part in so many things. Some may work out, some may not, but you still got to experience it in the first place. Someone said the fear of failure is way worse than failing itself, and I would agree. When you're held back by your fear of failure, you limit yourself and the experiences you will have in so many other ways. You limit yourself in the learning and what you're capable of doing. You limit yourself in your growth and development. That's not a thriving life to get excited about. That's a surviving life, just trying to make it. And the cool thing about failure, though, is that when you fail with the right mindset, you realize it's not the end of the world. It becomes less scary because you realize you can just bounce back. You can pivot, you can grow, you can learn. And you realize this, it takes the fear factor out and frees you to try new experiences and challenge yourself. Help others in the journey also. And pursue awesome, challenging things in your own life. Now that sounds a whole lot more like thriving, right? And more importantly, you're modeling this mindset for your kiddos and allowing them to see failure as an opportunity and not a devastation. No more D words. And you're helping set them up for a life of thriving as well. So high five to you. You got this. Want more of this? Let's stay connected. You can subscribe here. Also, make sure to scan the QR code to get weekly-ish visits from me in your email with tools and resources to help you get your kiddos and your family out of survival mode and on their way to thriving. I promise I will only send things I believe will be ultra valuable to you. So I'm so thrilled we got connected, and I can't wait to see you again. Welcome to the Well-Equipped family.